All righty. Hi. It is 7 o'clock. I don't know if people are here yet. I hope they are. Hi. Welcome to FreeThinker's Fireside, where we put the human and humanist one cozy chat at a time. I say we, but it's really just me. I am Helen, also known as House Bells, and this week, my guest is one of the coolest anti-apologetics people that I know, Jim Barrows. So let's say hi to Jim. Hi,
Hello, hello.
Jim. Say hi to
How's
the
it going?
internet.
Hello, Internet, once again.
Again and again and again.
Yeah, pretty much.
So
Uh,
we're waiting. People usually trail in here after like the first few minutes. Usually,
yeah, no worries.
that's usually how it goes. So we'll give them a couple minutes to show up. So
Yeah,
because
no
I
worries.
go because like people don't wait for me.
Right.
They're fashionably late.
Not yet. Not yet. They will eventually. But
So while we're waiting, so this one when I actually post this online, people watch it later. Tell the people who you are, what you do, and why you want to talk about this particular topic today.
sure. My name is Jim Barrows. I'm a host on Atheist Experience and some other shows as well. Occasional host on the line. Less occasionally on Talk Heathen and some other shows on the ACA. I've been doing this for a number of years now. And I'm primarily a software engineer, scuba diver, and I do this for fun and excitement in my spare time. I have a channel, I just don't do much with it. Mostly because I just enjoy doing this type of format, rather than doing all the hard work that goes on behind the scenes. I'd much rather just be here and be a talking head.
I started doing that, and then I was like, well, I guess I should start a podcast. But this is the easy part because I just talk to my friends about whatever
Right.
they want to talk about and just put it online. Like, here you go.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, but yeah.
I'm a lazy podcaster.
Yeah. I should probably look into doing that. But and so mostly because we have religion affects so many parts of our lives, right? We just had the entire Christian evangelical community vote for somebody who is objectively atrocious. I mean, let's take a look what he's done just since he's been reelected, right? He's promoted a whole host of morally bankrupt cabinet members. Matt Gaetz is not the only one; he's just the worst of the bunch. So far from what we found out, he's the worst of the bunch. And then he's threatened to take over the Panama Canal, Canada and Greenland. And
Sure.
yeah. So what's really interesting is basically what he's done is he's guaranteed if he continues down this path when he gets president, Panama is going to go run over and hide behind China's skirts or Russia's, probably China's. But although the Chinese have been making noise about spending the billions of dollars that it would take to, I think it's Honduras. Panama is not the best place to put a canal. The best place, I think, is like Honduras, a little bit farther south than Panama, because it's flatter. You don't have to do the locks. You just need to dig the channel. And back when they were thinking about doing this, they couldn't get the rights to dig the channel. So Panama knows this and wants to keep things going. So why wouldn't they make a deal with China if we're going to be belligerent and assholes about things?
Right.
Greenland
I think that's a very fair assessment.
Like, yeah. Denmark or Greenland is part of Denmark. So that's a NATO country. So now we're threatening our allies.
Trump's on brand then.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever read his book on negotiation, which I have, it's mostly threatening the people you're dealing with. It's mostly bluster and threaten and just be obnoxious. It's not really a good way to deal with anything.
That's not strategy. That's just being a butthead.
No, and then you go read a book like Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss is a FBI hostage negotiator.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knows a thing or two about negotiation. The books are vastly different, and one actually works and the other one doesn't, because you know, if you don't want to deal with the guy, you don't have to. And I think that's, you know,
Right.
a large part of that. So objectively, this guy is just absolutely nuts, and yet the evangelicals, this guy doesn't even know which way to hold the Bible up. He can't tell you what his favorite Bible verse is. He's not a Christian by any stretch of the imagination. I've been to church more in the last
Shocking.
10 years than Trump has. So yeah. But it's not just that; it's a
Shocking.
whole.
I'm
Yeah,
very shocked
exactly.
that Trump is not a true Christian. I mean, he, cheating on his wife when she was pregnant,
Every time.
sexually assaulting women, like, can't, I don't think he would know what to do at a prayer service. He looks really awkward when he's been presidential sort of like religious services. He just looks like he sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, he does anyway, but like, I'm like, you
Right.
can't even blend. Like,
Yeah.
so, like, I do love his response. Like, I don't really want to answer that question what my favorite Bible verse is, because I feel that's private. I'm like, oh.
You don't know what a Bible verse is.
One of his cabinet members told him, like, pick something,
Right.
and he was just like, nah.
Exactly, because nobody presses him on it. Then you've got, the whole rash of states banning abortion for no good reason. Bibles back in schools, even though we're a secular society. The whole 9 yards of things that we see happening right now is coming from the evangelicals, and it's because of their book. And their book is, just has horrifyingly bad problems. Being misogynistic being one of them, being pro-slavery being another, and just short-sighted nonsense throughout the whole thing. It's got a few good morals, not too many. And we're not even talking about the people who take the Bible literally, who are anti-science. Those people are probably the worst, because they're the ones who are going to drag us down the most, are the ones who are anti-science. So if you don't believe in evolution, you just haven't studied the evidence. I don't care what you say. Most of the time when I talk about evolution, people can't even define it correctly in the modern term. They still use, use Darwin. It's like, no, we've gotten past Darwin. He's dead. Has been for 200 years now. We've made some progress since then.
Right. Yeah.
So that's all reasons why I just, let's get critical thinking involved. Let's have good epistemologies. Let's understand how and why we know things. And hopefully that fixes the trend, right? Learning how to critically think, how to consume information. There's a meme going around with the murderer who shot the insurance executive and a guy who shot some other folks. And the security detail around the first murderer is quite heavy. The second one, there's almost nothing. The implication is that the police are afraid of this guy more than they are the guy who's killed one person versus the guy who's killed five. And it's like, well,
right.
Does the meme really say that? Or does it say that the cops are worried about somebody trying to free him or kill him because he's such a popular person? So, but the meme doesn't get into that. It's just trying to point out this difference. And then you get into things like every police department has a different set of rules for how they're going to transfer prisoners and under what conditions. And, if it's the same police department doing the same thing in the same circumstances, but not all murderers are the same. Some get notoriety for whatever reason, which will bring out the crazier crazies than that person. So without knowing what those heavily armed police officers were doing and why they were there, you can't make that apples to apples comparison.
It's like the drones in New Jersey, like,
yeah,
which are just drones. My friend Rob, who writes for the Skeptical Inquirer, wrote a very detailed piece about what they probably are and the reaction people are having to it, that reacting to a bunch of nothing really,
right.
and getting hysterical about it, and it gets news. And he said that the comment section was basically people trying to, other than people that were like, oh, this is had good information, which is mostly people saying that he's in and on it on one end, or
Right.
he's completely wrong, and it's either Chinese spies or aliens, or pick whatever crazy conspiracy theory you can think of. The government, because the government,
Right.
I'm like, listen, I have a phone. I know the government's paying attention to me. I know. Like, they're seeing me read my fanfic and watch cat videos. And I'm like,
Well,
so, but I'm like,
what
if
was
you want, they don't need to send drones over my house. They can, but of all places, New Jersey, and my friend Rob lives in New Jersey, so that made it especially funny,
right.
just because of people's inability to be like, it's weird. These drones are just hanging around over certain areas of New Jersey, but do I think it's anything other than drones and either some kids playing a prank, which is
Right.
more likely, it's kind of like crop circles, or
Right. Well, this goes back to critical thinking. It's like, what are the facts? The facts are drones are hanging around New Jersey, and nobody knows who's flying them or why. Those are the facts. Everything else is speculation. So,
sorry, I wave at my chat. So I chat because I don't want to interrupt people speaking, but I also I'm like, hi, chat. So,
yep.
So let's talk about this. Okay, I didn't read the book, but I did read your notes.
Okay.
All right, so let's dive into I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, so that's fine.
Right. This is Frank Turek. If you know, the hardest part about reading this book is having listened to Frank Turek and expect something new. Don't. It's Frank Turek. It's all he's got. Now, this book was also co-written by Norman Geisler. My understanding is that he is passed on. But Frank Turek basically preaches the book, this book, and not much else. I know he's written other stuff, but it doesn't seem like we have much. And his chapter titles are kind of give you the idea where his argument's going. He starts with, can we handle the truth? Why should anyone believe anything at all? In the beginning, there was a great surge, divine design, the natural law or divine awe, new life forms from the goo to you via the zoo. Mother Teresa versus Hitler, miracles, signs of God, or gullibility. Do we have early testimony about Jesus? Do we have eyewitness testimony about Jesus? The top 10 reasons we know the New Testament writers told the truth. Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Who is Jesus, God, or just a great moral teacher? What did Jesus teach about the Bible? And then conclusion, the judge, the servant, king, and the box top. Now, if you followed that, you're wondering, where the heck did the box top come from? And that's a really good question, because mentioning it there in the title doesn't really make much sense unless you've read the introduction, which is where they start talking about how religion is like the box top of a puzzle. The box top shows you what the puzzle should look like, and claims to answer the 5 big questions to life. Where did we come from? My biological parents had sex. Who are we? We're the sum of our DNA, experiences, and culture. Why are we here? Our parents had sex. How should we live? As well as we can, as long as it doesn't negatively impact others. And where are we going? The grave. Okay, I just answered your great philosophical question.
You
I
answered
don't
all the
understand what the
questions.
problem is, right? And 2 of the 5 were because my
Moving on.
yeah.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Exactly. They get a lot of stuff in here wrong where they talk about the different pagan religions. And it's really kind of half-assed. I don't know of a single pagan who would agree with anything they say, but I don't know all the pagans, so take that with that grain of salt.
I would love to hear those arguments as a former pagan, because I'm sure they would drive me insane.
Yeah, it's not a lot, which is part of the problem.
Yeah.
And they're really just trying to hand wave it all away more than anything else. They're not trying to make serious. They're not being serious here. And by serious, I mean they're not trying to actually argue against any pagan faith. They do start the argument in the introduction. So, in an introduction, I would expect people to set up some things, maybe provide some definitions of things, that kind of thing. And this is really chapter 1. Whether they want it to be or not, that is exactly what it is. They do kind of go over, what they're trying to do. They say they're going to provide evidence. They're going to start against complete skepticism, complete skepticism is nonsense anyway. And then if the reasoning is sound, it disproves other religions where they differ from the Bible, and they're going to give evidence for Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
That's the plan. And
okay.
some of this is actually not bad. Like the first 3 chapters aren't horrible. They start off with defining truth, which is good. They say, so this is their definition.
Sorry, I can't help myself.
Telling it like it is, that which corresponds to its object, that which describes an actual state of affairs. That's interesting. I like the dictionary definition better. 1, the body of real things, events, and facts. 2, the property as of a statement of being in accord with fact or reality, sincerity in action, character, and utterance. And I stole this from Apologia because I love this much better. The truth is that which informs reality as adjudicated by predictive power. Because it gives us a test on how to test something, whether or not it is true. But telling it like it is does not necessarily mean you're telling the truth. You're saying things as you see them, but that may not actually be the case. That which corresponds to its object is a little better, and that which describes an actual state of affairs is probably the best of the ones that they use. And then they go on to this thing where they say, in college, you'll learn that there is no such thing as truth. And they call that a self-defeating statement. And they're right, it is. If the statement is true, then it is automatically false, right? But they're saying this is being taught in general and college. And that statement can be true in the right context. History is a game of, Bayesian predictability, right? We're using probability statements to come to arrive at something about history, and other soft subjects like that, writing and things like that. You could probably make that case. But I've been in college. I don't know many people in college who've heard that, so I don't know where they're getting this from.
I went to college and I didn't hear that.
Yeah, exactly. And here's a quote from this section. What amazes us is that parents worldwide are paying thousands of dollars in college tuition so that their sons and daughters can be taught the truth that there is no truth. Yeah, sure, prove it. There is no citation for that. What? Yeah, exactly. I would really love to. How do you square this with engineering? right? Let's say mechanical engineering. Of course, there's a truth. Math,
biological
right?
sciences.
Yeah, there's all kinds of. There's no science, especially the hard sciences, that doesn't deal that where the truth has to be there. So, you know, can the truth be known? Yes, of course it can. Is their next section, and this is where, you know, when they start going into some of this, it's not bad, but it's also, they spend time in this section, this chapter, preaching. They spend time doing really crazy stuff, like anecdotes that don't make any sense in this. Anecdotes aren't evidence; they're not arguments; they're anecdotes.
Yeah.
So they start. They have a technique in here they call the evangelism. Yeah, I think I spelled the word
Okay. All right.
explosion. And it starts with two questions. Can I ask you a spiritual question? And the second one is, if you were to die tonight and stand before God, and God were to ask you, why should I let you into my heaven? What would you say? So let's try this. You want to try it?
Okay.
I'll do the
Sure.
asking. Can I
Okay.
ask you a spiritual question?
What do you mean by spiritual?
Yeah, that was my response. Okay.
It's always my first question. Like, are you spiritual? What do you mean by, like, it's my first response, because if I ask 10 different people, I'll get 10 different answers. It's
Right.
very vague, you know?
Yeah. And then let's assume I've given you a satisfactory answer to one.
Okay.
I don't think there is
I'll
one.
say, so, okay, I'll go, sure. I will modify what I will not really say and go, sure.
If you were to die tonight and stand before God, and God were to ask you, why should I let you into my heaven? What would you say?
What would I say to God if he asked? What?
Why should he let you into his heaven?
I didn't genocide a planet. So I think that gives me a point in favor. Two, I have questions for you. So that would be my second thing I would say. And three, I'd be like, listen, dude, I'm like just because I'm queer and I masturbated, like, I really feel that's not a reason to send me to hell. I'm just gonna be honest. And that's probably it. But mostly, like, you know, like, as Richard Dawkins, though I don't like him because he's a butthead. I think that his answer of, why have you made it so hard for us to discover that you're real? Why did you make it like the worst fucking game of hide and seek ever? I think that is a very reasonable question to ask a god, you know, because, and I think that for, like, I would ask very pragmatic questions if I was before God. Like, I wouldn't like fall to my knees, because they always ask me, like, if I'm talking to atheists, they're like, well, what if you found out like God was here? And I'd be like, I would go, okay. Yeah. God, you're real. And that's about it.
Like, why should you let me in? I'm more moral than you. You know, like you said, I've never genocided a, well, and Jer, this part isn't horrible. We haven't gotten to the horrible parts yet. So this is just chapter one, and it's not
this
horrible.
Is just part one.
It's not good, but it's not horrible. The best chapter is I think it's chapter 3, where we talk about SURGE, the acronym SURGE. But anyway, I'm more, you know, I haven't genocided a planet. I haven't genocided the Canaanites. I haven't stood idly by while people enslaved others. I didn't stand idly by and let the Jewish folks go through the Holocaust, right? I didn't stand idly by.
That's also a plus. Your call.
Yeah. I didn't idly stand by while the Spanish Inquisition happened. Now, if I was part of the Spanish culture at that point, I probably would have participated in some way, just because I was part of the culture. But the me of 2024 wouldn't, and would oppose it. But yeah, so that's And the other, I think, really weird thing that they say tolerance now means that you have to accept every belief is true. And I'm like, say what? So tolerate definitions are capacity to endure pain or hardship, sympathy or an indulgence for beliefs or practices differing from or conflicting with one's own. And that's the definition that I like for tolerance. It's sympathy or indulgence for beliefs or practices differing from. So, like I live in the South, and very common down here. It's very common to hear, "May you have a blessed day." Okay, I tolerate that.
I hear it I usually hear it several times a day because I work with old people.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
I don't know when that phrase came into being. Maybe it's been in the South for a long time, and I just haven't lived around people who said it or whatever.
Yeah,
But
it wasn't a saying in New England when I was growing up.
Yeah. So it's just like, okay, I can be tolerant of that. That doesn't mean I believe in God. Doesn't mean any of that. It just means I'm being tolerant. So this isn't bad just because it starts with a halfway decent definition of truth and then it slowly gets worse.
Again, the slow burn. So like at the beginning,
Exactly.
you're like, oh, it's not that bad. And then the more you read, you're like, oh no.
Yeah, and the worst thing about it is, this chapter is 16 pages, 8 sections, of which less than a page actually moves these people closer to their goal of trying to prove that God exists by starting with the definition of truth. The rest of this is just absolute garbage. So again, not bad. And keep in mind, we're talking about Frank Turek here. So
I don't know who Frank Turek is. So explain to the audience and especially me who Frank Turek is, because there are people that may not know who he is, including myself.
Frank Turek
I can't
is an
keep up with all the
apologist.
theologians. I got stuff to do.
Yeah, he is strictly an apologist, evangelical of some type. He is also, I believe, a diagnosed psychopath, or what's the other one?
Oh, that's fine.
Right. So, and the only reason he's not giving into his impulses is because of his belief in God. But his shtick is, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. That's his entire shtick. And so he makes his living going around giving basically the same talk every time he does it. I'm sure he changes it up to keep the audiences entertained, but that's basically who he is. So, like I said, you go through this book, you pretty much have an idea what he's going to be talking about. It was written in 2004, but it doesn't. Every time I hear him talk, especially like in the last 2 or 3 years, it doesn't sound like he has actually updated the book at all for anything.
Oh, well, what are you going to update it with, honestly?
Well, you could at least keep up with the latest in science.
No, Jim, because then if he kept up with the latest in science, he would have to realize that science will change and with new information and have to believe in the scientific method. No, we can't have that when, like, magic.
Right.
I believe in magic.
Right. Now, he's not a young earth creationist. He does accept the Big Bang
you
is
get
true.
1 point. You get a point.
Yes.
You get 1 point.
But he is anti-evolution. Yeah. Those two things don't seem to go together, but so in the second chapter is why should anyone believe anything at all? And they make some decent points in the intro to the chapter. Any teaching is worth trusting only if it points to the truth. Many beliefs people hold aren't supported by the evidence. You must give up your subjective preferences in favor of objective facts. Yes, irony has come in here and stomped with big, big boots all over them. They talk about the law of identity, law of non-contradiction, law of excluded middle. They also claim that some philosophers ignore them. And then they try to spend the next 2 sections proving that they ignore the laws of logic, and they spoiler alert, they fail.
No, I'm shocked.
Yeah. So they go into Hume skepticism and make a complete dog's dinner out of it. Kant's agnosticism is also, they also take a shot at Kant as well. So what's really, so the funny thing is, Turek is not a philosopher. Geisling was. And he should have known that Kant was a theist, and Kant never made an argument against God necessarily. So they kind of miss that because Kant was a theist. He may not have been a Christian, but he was definitely a theist. And then my question is, why are they picking on these two? Graham Oppie and others, modern philosophers, have been around for a while. They could have picked on them, but no, we got to go pick on dead people, some of whom's arguments have been picked apart by modern philosophers. The conversation is about that. So those are they get the laws of logic right. They don't get Hume correctly at all. They do talk about logical positivism. However, this was this was espoused by a philosopher named A.J. Ayer, and during the 1960s it was pretty popular. But in 1979, A.J. Ayer admitted that logical positivism has failed. Again, this book was written in 2004. Why are they mentioning logical positivism, a failed philosophy and admitted by the founder or the biggest espouser of the philosophy in 1979? Again,
I'm just going to say, Jim, it sounds like Turk didn't do his due diligence. I'm just saying.
But Geisling should have. Remember, Geisling's the philosopher. He's the professor. Right. He's the guy who should know this stuff, and he didn't.
Oh, great. So Geisling didn't do his due diligence, which was kind of his job.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Now, in this section, they start to set up they starting to sweeten the well here, and by that I mean the exact opposite of poisoning the well. Right? They're trying to set us up so that when they make the theological and moral arguments, they've already laid the groundwork for those two here, is what they're attempting to do. And I don't think they make it very well, and they don't do a really good job in that second chapter. I have notes that are fairly extensive. I'm just not going to try and bore everybody with them, and I am trying to work on some videos taking this apart. But now this chapter 3 is their best chapter. Okay, and I'm not saying it's a good chapter.
It's the best one. Oh boy, I can't wait.
So they talk about, they start off with the Kalam cosmological argument, and say that that's the end for atheism. And for those who aren't familiar, the Kalam in the classic form is everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Now, that's where it stops. There's nothing about a God in the classic form of the Kalam cosmological argument. And we're not get into this couple of pieces of science that actually knock this down completely with some modern stuff done in the last couple of years. But they add, if the universe has a cause, then an uncaused personal creator exists who is sans the universe, without beginning, changeless, immaterial, timeless, spaceless, and enormously powerful. Therefore, an uncaused personal creator of the universe exists who, without the universe, is changeless. Right? Sure. Right. So this.
I have so many quibbles. So many quibbles.
Well, they're just added on. They don't actually make a case that it has to be a personal creator. They don't make any of these cases. They don't make without beginning, changeless, timeless, and enormously powerful, right? And enormously powerful, what does that even mean? Energy can't be created or destroyed. So enormously powerful, what does that mean in this context? And energy and mass are the same thing. Energy, mass, and time all come into existence after the beginning of the Big Bang, shortly after, whatever after means in that context. But the first premise, everything that begins to exist has a cause. So 2 years ago, Nobel Prize was awarded for proving that two quantumly entangled particles. Well, so this isn't the part that they got the Nobel Prize. So two quantumly entangled particles always have opposite spin. The Nobel Prize was given for proving that there's no cause for that. Oh, look, everything except quantumly entangled particles having opposite spin begins to exist or has a cause. The spin happens after the quantum entanglement, but the quantum entanglement doesn't cause the spin. There is no cause for the spin. Oh, I guess modern science actually shoots that whole thing down. And then the universe began to exist. What do we mean by exist? We know energy can't be created or destroyed. So all the energy in the universe is still balanced at zero. So what does it mean to begin to exist?
Search me.
There doesn't, yeah. So you said you had some quibbles. What's yours?
Well, oh fuck! Now I lost them because we went on to something else. ADHD, man.
I have it too. It was if the universe has a cause and an uncaused personal creator exists without beginning, chainless, immaterial, timeless, spaceless, and enormously powerful. That was where you said you had a quibble.
Because define exist. One, like define that. Two, where does that get us to a god? Because we can all like there is the scientific theory that the universe would still be here even if we weren't around to observe it. Like we all know that, reality is going to stick. But the issue I have is that he's kind of putting the cart before the horse, where he's kind of going backwards and saying, well, because the universe exists, then there must be a causal effect for it to exist. And I'm like, well, one, why? Define what exists means. Does it mean that are you talking about reality, or you're talking about like, I believe that like leprechauns exist? Like what is your definition of existence? And then I want to go backtrack and this is always my thing. I'm like, I don't really care what the argument is. I'm like, just show me a god exists and then we can have discussions about your fucking arguments. Like that's really that is always my problem, because it is always putting the cart before the horse. It is like saying like, this makes sense, so therefore God or Krishna or whatever has to exist. And I'm like, cool, man, that's your opinion, but you actually have to show it. Like, I'm not going to just take your word. I tend to be a little skeptical about things. So, and I understand that they're mostly writing these books not to convince us. It is for their audience.
Yes.
Because those of us that are real skeptics have like diagnosed all this stuff and kind of really thought about it. And we're just kind of like, no, that doesn't really hold water. Because if I can read like 2 sentences and questions are already coming up that I would like answers to that you cannot answer, it's not a good argument.
Right. Yeah.
I have quibbles. I always have quibbles.
Oh yeah, there are quibbles with the argument, right? With the Kalam, and there's more than quibbles. There's scientific evidence against it. And then just today, I read scientists have found evidence.
There, I asked him, Cindy.
Oh, debate with Meadows. Vaguely, I remember my debate with Meadows. I don't think I did as good as I'd wanted. I didn't do as much prep as I wanted, but I vaguely remember it. So. Yeah, I should probably go back and review it so I can make sure I don't make the same mistakes.
No, we can do a whole review. We watch it together and have a whole other podcast about your.
Yeah, we can do that.
We can do that. I have a show. I can have whoever I want.
So they start with that, and now they're going to prove that the universe had a beginning. to go with the Kalam, to support the Kalam, that the universe began to exist. They're going to support that.
Okay.
And this is the part that actually is pretty good for Turek, because it's actually a useful way to remember all the evidence we have for the Big Bang. And that is the acronym SURGE, SURGE. So the S stands for the second law of thermodynamics, which they mostly get right. Now, in their defense, they're speaking in the vernacular and not super precise in their language. And so that's okay if you're not talking, for the audience they have who aren't scientists. But it also means that some of the examples they use don't work very well. Thinking of the universe as your car's gasoline or a flashlight battery is kind of a good metaphor, but technically wrong. Energy doesn't go to
your
zero.
battery's eventually going to run out. I'm just kidding.
Right. Well, that's what the analogy is, right?
Right.
Is the universe is running out of steam, basically, is what they're trying to say. And that works as a metaphor only so far, right? It's like Forrest says about science, right? All models are wrong, some models are useful. Using gasoline running out or flashlight batteries running out is a model, and it's kind of useful, but it's really also very wrong.
All right, I will be fair. Eventually the universe is going to cease to exist, but it like trillions and trillions and trillions of years into the future, like the energy that makes the universe will eventually fall onto itself. That being said, because that's like quantum, big cosmological arguments that eventually the energy will compress back onto itself. That doesn't, and so the universe may end. So fine, we'll use the flashlight fucking analogy for that. But it's not in the same sort of context of where we understand that, like there's nothing behind the universe like charging it up. Like because you would assume that the flashlight is like the battery's charging the flashlight up. So there have to be a source for it to, be able to, produce light or whatever.
Right. Well, so, and the problem they have with is that the second law of thermodynamics doesn't say that energy goes to zero. It says it arrives at a state of thermodynamic equilibrium. Because scientists don't think that you can actually get to zero energy. We just don't see that, because it doesn't. You'd have to get into the science, but basically, we can't measure zero energy ever. It's always just bubbling there at close. A number so close to zero that unless you're a quantum physicist, you probably don't care. So then they get to this another anecdote. God, I hate these anecdotes with a passion. They claim to ask a physicist, if matter is eternal, what do you do with the second law of thermodynamics? And they say that this physicist said, quote, every law has an exception, and this is mine, as a valid argument. Now, I say I don't see a physicist saying that.
Repeat that.
Every law has an exception, and this is mine.
Really?
So I could see.
When we're talking about ethics, fine. But are we talking about like does the second law of thermodynamics have an exception?
No.
I would like to talk to a physicist about this, please.
You don't have to. The second law of thermodynamics is expressed as an equation. All the laws of thermodynamics are right.
Well, I'm just saying someone's smarter than me.
Right. So as a general rule, when it comes to physics, and this is a rule of thumb, so it's not always true because physicists, but laws are usually expressed or can usually be expressed as equations.
Right.
So if there's an exception to them, it has to be included in the equation. And the laws of thermodynamics do have equations that go with them. So no. I could see a physicist saying this if they thought you're a complete idiot. and just wanted to shut you up and make you go away. But saying that as a serious answer to that question doesn't make any sense, because this would indicate that the physicist doesn't know that E equals mc squared.
Right.
And doesn't know anything about the laws of thermodynamics. And any physicist with any bachelor's degree physicist knows more than Frank Turek and his co-author here. So,
But here's
entire
my problem. Like, here's a quibble.
uh-huh.
I have a quibble. Okay, let's just say, let's grant Turek the fact that, you know, maybe God put this in, because like this is the problem. He like believes he doesn't believe in evolution, but he believes in the Big Bang, correct?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know how you squared that, but that's fine. That's not the question I'm asking. But it's, so if you believe that, then you believe that energy expands. You believe that, like, you have to, like, there's a certain amount of physics and scientific knowledge you need to know of how that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're just being like, well, yeah, but this doesn't fit my paradigm, so I'm gonna like make exceptions for the thing that I also believe actually happened. I have a problem with that, because you have to you can't square that in a logical sense. That's like,
Right.
and I haven't even read his fucking book. I just,
Yeah.
as soon as you said that, I was like, wait, hold on.
Right, because he doesn't understand that all biology is chemistry, all chemistry is physics, and all physics is quantum mechanics. Doesn't understand that. So that the S in surge stands for second law of thermodynamics. And the second law of thermodynamics is one of the pieces of evidence we have for the Big Bang. Yes, he is correct. May not be the best, but it's one. The U is that universe is expanding. And they claim this gives us atheists a hard time. It doesn't, because the expansion of the universe has nothing to do with God.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not too bad. Yes, the universe is expanding, and that is predicted by the Big Bang Theory. Radiation from the Big Bang is R in surge. Yes, cosmic background radiation is the best proof for the Big Bang. The theory predicted it, and scientists found it. G is great galaxy seeds. Yes, they exist, and was predicted, and they once again proven it. Now there is some newer stuff that's come on to throw that kind of made people wonder about the great galaxy seeds that the Hubble did. I should go back and redo this to bring that in, because it is kind of interesting. But it didn't disprove the great galaxy seeds thing at all. E in surge is Einstein's theory of relativity. And yes, relativity has been proven to be true. It does have some issues, but it is true. I mean, and the issues aren't with the theory itself, it's in our understanding of how things actually work. But yes, it's there. And gravity waves predicted it. So using surge to remember the evidences, the pieces of evidence for the Big Bang is absolutely wonderful. And then it gets worse.
Of course. See, Angier, it did get worse.
But again, I don't want to just rag on these guys, because they do say some okay things. And most of the okay things are these first 3 chapters. So then we get into the apologetics, and it's just absolute crap.
Me and SR had this talk when he was here, is that like you can have your big pile, like, you know, you can find your little kernels of corn in a pile of shit, you know, it's one of those things, like, you know, like, great, you got some stuff okay, but then you keep talking you're like, oh no, and then it gets worse, which is again concerning, because I like, and this is my issue with again, this, like, I am not his audience, because I would not buy this book or read it because
Right.
I love myself, but also at the same time, like, the issue I have is the fact that he wants to present only, he wants to sound scientific. So he's presenting certain arguments like the second law of thermodynamics as a way, like, look, I'm a smart person. I accept certain amount of science only to a certain point where then if you're contradicting how I'm going to explain how my God exists. And that's the problem I have. I don't like that dishonesty that a lot of these apologists do.
Yeah, exactly. If you're gonna buy the science, buy the science. Don't buy bits and pieces of it. That's not the way any of it works.
Like, I've been wrong about the bits and pieces of science, but as soon as someone's like, oh, blah, 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 like, that's not, and I'll go, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And then I adjust.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you I was wrong. I'll be like, I was totally wrong about that. I apologize. That's why I'm like, don't come to me with science questions, because coming to me with psychology and some philosophy questions, I can help you. But other than that, don't ask me questions. You want to know about Lord of the Rings shit? I'm your girl.
Yeah. When they're sticking with the science, my biggest quibble with them is that they're speaking in the vernacular and using imperfect models. But none of that detracts from what they're saying about it to people who have no scientific background, right? And so if you take that audience into consideration, it's actually pretty good, right? Because that's the problem that science communicators have all the time, is taking highly technical subjects and making them understandable. And sometimes you have to use models that don't work quite as well as they should.
Yeah.
And that's fine, because as long as the people kind of get the gist of what you're saying, you've successfully communicated to them. But yeah, it's, now we get into, now
it's like
it gets
people trying to
worse.
understand wormholes through movies.
Right,
watch any sci-fi time travel thing, like it works like for like, you're like, okay, like your simple brain, but it wouldn't actually work like that when you're actually doing the physics for it, like with the equations of how that would work. But you can't tell like Joe Schmo, how the actual equations and physics would work for a wormhole to actually to work, for time travel, or getting across the galaxy or whatever, like that. It's good. It's too big of a concept. But if you watch Interstellar, you get Matthew McConaughey to explain it to you, then you're like, oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah. So the next section is where things get really
I agree,
weird,
Robin. I agree.
Yeah, well, you have to know it's lying for it to be alive.
Yeah, like, and then again, like I said, like this book is not for us. Like we're like, I'm like, you're just explaining it to me and I have quibbles. Like, I haven't read it.
Exactly.
but it's so bad because it's just always the same thing. And like you said, he hasn't updated anything since 2004. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, the next section of this chapter is called The Empire Strikes Back. And basically,
that's my favorite movie.
Well,
no. Star Wars movie. Always gonna ruin it for me. I'm gonna be very mad.
So they spend part of this section talking about how the Genesis and the Big Bang are the same thing. Now, they're not, and I can go into that if people really want me to. But basically, if you squint, the first Genesis story kind of sort of maybe does, but the second Genesis story doesn't. And there are two Genesis stories. And yes, I know there are apologetics that say there's only one, but they're not. Anybody who makes those apologetics isn't reading.
All right, now I have to look
taking the Bible literally.
Fucking bullshit.
Like, right. Okay. But they set this up so that they can say that scientists, in opposition to the Bible, come up with other theories. which I think is highly arrogant to think that scientists are actually coming up with theories to defeat the Bible. That just makes no sense.
That makes no
But they do,
sense.
yeah, they spend a lot of time setting up this us versus them, Christians versus the world, persecution porn. And this is part of that.
I have a problem. Like I'm going to defend the Christians right now. I'm sorry. Because I don't think that's fair. Because there are plenty of Christians out there that they separate their theological beliefs from their scientific understanding of the world. I am more on those sides people, and I don't like people that say that you can't square them when there's I don't understand how, and I did the same thing. I squared it in my brain because I remember doing this. So I'm a little bit more sympathetic to that because I understand that mindset. And it frustrates me when people are like, no, you have to either, go all in or make special exceptions, where people are just like, no, these are my theological beliefs. I believe the Bible's metaphor, but I still believe in a God or whatever. But science is science.
Yeah. Well, every Christian who says they believe the literal word of the Bible makes interpretations. And as soon as you start interpreting it, you are no longer taking it word for word. But anyway, and they use this to kind of set this up, and they talk about a number of other theories that are postulated here and there, like cosmic rebound theory. There are some folks who think they see some evidence for previous Big Bangs, but the jury is still out, and I don't know that anybody has actually verified what they've said. There's a bunch of cosmic rebound theories, and these guys only deal with one of them. And they get the problems with the one that they mentioned, right? But honestly, that's not to defeat the Big Bang. In fact, it goes with the Big Bang. It's just their reasoning for dismissing it. The physicists' fault. I think most physicists, astrophysicists, have discarded it as well. At least the one that they talk about. They don't even mention there are multiple different versions of the cosmic rebound theory, which is kind of problematic. Then they mentioned something called imaginary time. Now, here's something I didn't know existed. But Stephen Hawking, imaginary time.
What's imaginary time? Now I'm curious.
Yeah, I did. I investigated enough to know that Stephen Hawking proposed it. It went nowhere. It's not popular. Maybe it was more popular in 2004 when they wrote it. I don't know, but there were better things to use in imaginary time. And they try to use the Heisenberg uncertainty principle as a counter to the law of causality.
Yeah, okay, that I do know.
Well, unfortunately, the law of causality doesn't exist. And again, physicists have proven this with the Bell theorem and going through all that. There's a whole bunch of science on that as well. We can go into it, but basically, cause and effect doesn't actually exist.
I can read a wiki article. You don't have to go into it.
Okay. Yeah,
I'll even put the wiki article in chat if anybody else wants to know about it.
And yes, the one thing they get right about the uncertainty principle is that it's about predictability, not causation. I don't know of anybody who thinks of any physicist that thinks it's about causation. There are probably non-physicists who think it does.
Why would the uncertainty
but they would be wrong.
Why would the uncertainty principle have show causation? Because it's uncertain.
I don't know.
That's a contradictory statement, because causation would be a predictability.
Right.
Uncertainty doesn't have predictability. That must what makes it uncertain. It's a contradictory statement. This is me just being pedantic. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm being pedantic.
Right. I just posted the link to the law of cause and effect doesn't exist article.
Okay, I'll put that also in the chat.
Yeah, just if they really want to read it. Then they
My
get into
audience
the
is smart. They're smart people.
Yeah. Then they get into the more Big Bang proves God because of Genesis.
I don't.
And then they start. Then they
Wait.
start
Okay.
with
So hold on. Let's go. Let's go back. How does the Big Bang, Big Bang prove God?
It doesn't. That's just more their. They
No, I
basically
know it
repeat.
doesn't. I'm asking what their argument is.
No, it's because the first story in Genesis, if you squint, tilt your head while drinking 2/5 of vodka,
Right.
kind of sounds like the Big Bang. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, sure. But explain to me how 3.5 billion years is 7 days. I'm just
No, no,
saying.
no clue.
I
It
got
makes no
quibbles,
sense.
man. I got quibbles. I got questions.
Right. And then they have a quote from a physicist. Now, whenever I say from a physicist, it's because that's the wording they use. And they don't tell us what physicist. And I never went to
That's a problem. Like
Yeah,
the person that went to college, like cite your sources.
they don't do that very well at all.
You're
They do it in
failing,
some
Drake.
places.
Shame on you for
Yeah.
not citing your
Well,
sources. That's the first thing you learn, even in
right,
high school when you're writing papers, is to cite your source.
right. And then they go on to talk about what the physicist said is the universe exploded out of nothingness,
Oh,
which is both true and not true at the same time. So the
yes.
physicists have a definition of nothing, and it is not the absolute nothing of philosophy. Now, interestingly enough, science has come to the rescue again and says that absolute nothing doesn't exist. And I actually wrote an article with all the science, and it is fully sourced, of course, because I like sourcing my stuff so that I know where I
Me
got it
too.
from, on my Substack. And it's a
Yay.
long one, which is why I'm not really going to go into it. But and I'm posting this because, well, I like that people want to know what my sources are for something. Well, guess what? I have it, and it's an article I have entitled "A Little Something About Nothing." Let me send that over to you, and then you can put it in chat. Because I tried putting it in chat, but the chat won't let me. It's just sending messages on the
Kyle's here.
support
We were
thread.
talking about Kyle. We're talking about science. We're talking about the whole cosmological shit. So this is right about you came in just in time.
Right. And so there's a thing called the Schwinger effect that's been proven to be true, which means that absolute nothing can't exist. Which, okay, that kind of kills that. However, Dr. Richard Carrier has written an argument about how something can come from philosophical nothing. And it's a bunch of propositions and takes a little while to read. And honestly, you should read it because it gets a little complicated. But to boil it down, absolute nothing would be so unstable that there's not anything stopping it from producing something. But if you really want to know what the argument is, because I haven't summed it up quite correctly, it's on that link to my little something about nothing.
Okay.
And it's also on Dr. Richard Carrier's blog, where he goes into more detail than I do because it's his. But yeah, it's so. Anyway.
Yeah, well,
Again,
I mean, this is the. I know. I feel you, man. like, this is the problem I have with like apologists. It's just like with just a little bit of research, it kind of falls apart, and you have to do special pleading, and you have to make exceptions, and you have to kind of insert things in there to make it work or take things out. And science doesn't work that way. Like it is always like, what is the best theory being presented? Is it unfalsifiable? That's what we're looking for. And even if it is unfalsifiable, they're still finding a way to try to falsify it just in case they get something wrong. And if something is wrong, they go, guess what? You know what? We were wrong about this. We need to adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like since the James Webb telescopes started, looking into deep space, where there a bunch of cosmologists and physicists have had to adjust to new science that's being presented to them,
Right.
and it's one of those things that they're going like, oh, we were wrong about like the original theories we had, but now we have new information. We need to adjust. It doesn't mean that the theories before were bad. They just mean we didn't have all the information. It's kind of like how you solve a crime. Investigate.
Yeah.
Same concept. Weird.
Exactly. And that ends chapter 2. Like I said, chapter 3. Chapter 3 is the best chapter because for their audience, they get the science of how we know the Big Bang is true correct. And it is with a caveat for their audience, which is not scientists. They get it correct. And then it all goes to hell. And that is the best chapter. Just because they do get that right. Just to give credit where credit is due. And then, well, it gets worse.
It always gets worse. I just love the fact that it just keeps getting worse because oh boy. Okay, right. Let's walk down the road. Actually, you go ahead. I have to pee, so you're going to hold the podcast for a minute while I use the bathroom. So you're going to talk about the next part while I go pee. So I'm going to put you on a one shot.
Okay. So chapter 4 is the divine design.
No, you're wrong. Wait. I suck. Never mind. All right, I'm going to turn off my camera. There we go.
Okay. Cosmic Kyle, deeper I peer into the night with my telescope, the less inclined I am to fall for these stories of gods and supernatural anything. Nature is enough. Amen, Cosmic Kyle. Science is like the refining of oil into gasoline. It becomes clearer and clearer as we ask more questions. Yes. Very, very true. So divine design is where they set up the teleological argument. They begin to and make the teleological argument. And this is, of course, a problem. They also, the other thing they do here with this is they forget that it was a Christian who created the Big Bang Theory. And they keep putting scientists as the bad guys on here, and I don't understand why. But the teleological argument they present is every design has a designer. The universe is a highly complex design. Therefore, the universe has a designer. This makes no sense, right? And again, Geisling was a philosopher. He created this argument. And the conclusion should have all of the premises, but it doesn't include a highly complex design. Every design has a designer. Okay, so I think that the form of the argument is problematic, but we'll let that slide for a moment. Every design has a designer. True. Does the universe have a design? No, it doesn't. How do we know this? Because all biology is chemistry, all chemistry is physics, all physics is quantum mechanics, and quantum mechanics is about randomness. And again, I'm speaking, some physicists somewhere just had their head explode when I said that. And I didn't mean to do that, but it's kind of sort of true. Randomness is not a design. Rolling dice is not a design. Highly complex design. Let's talk about that. Because I'm a software engineer by trade. Complexity is what I deal with on a daily basis. And complex design does not indicate does not necessarily indicate a good designer, much less a design. Let me give you an example. A number of years ago, I worked for a company, and who the company is completely irrelevant. And they were running their database at full tilt, the hardware on the database at full tilt. And a way to get around that and to bring some of the load down, they split the database into two pieces. And then as things went on, about 5 years later, 7 years later, they realized that there was a problem and with performance. And part of the problem with performance was database A would call database B, who would then call back to database A, who would call back to database B before returning the answer. That was not designed into the system. Is that complex? Yes. It's unnecessary complexity that was never designed into the system. Nobody designed it. It just grew organically. They needed to add this to the original call, this piece of data to the original call. In order to get that, they have to make the call back. And things grow that way. Things grow organically because you don't have either don't have time to think about it, or nobody is really considering how this is, or you got to keep everything in flight and moving, and so you can't stop it to redesign it. And so highly complex. Another example would be one of the differences between diesel and gasoline engines. A diesel engine does not have spark plugs, a distributor cap, or any of that stuff. A diesel engine doesn't have any of that. A gas engine does. Gas engine is therefore more complex. It has more parts, but it's not unnecessarily more complex, right? Gas needs to be ignited with a spark plug because we can't get the pressures high enough to create the heat to cause the spark with current metal technology, et cetera. So there's a difference between unnecessary complexity and complexity. DNA is unnecessarily complex. It doesn't need to be that complex, but it is. The human body is unnecessarily complex. Why do we have a laryngeal nerve that goes from their brain to our voice box? And why do giraffes have one when it goes all the way down the length of their neck and then all the way back up? That makes no sense. That's unnecessary complexity. We keep looking at how biological systems come together, and we realize that there is a lot of, the only reason this exists is because the animal still has to live and pass on its genes. And so I have a problem with this highly complex design being indication of a designer. It's unnecessarily complex design.
Well, I mean, like, we keep saying that, that the idea of design is simplicity. Like yes. Even just when buying a house, you're always looking like, okay, am I going to have to do a bunch of complicated things? And they're like, oh, this has this feature, this has this feature, so it's easy. Because that's how we design things. If you have a mind, you're like, why would I make things unnecessarily complicated? That's why, but evolution, for some reason, it has nothing, there's no purpose behind it. It is just like, this is how this species survives. And the adaptation has passed on the genetics for that species to continue. That's all that is. Unless there's some kind of intervention from, like, let's say, a natural disaster or man or whatever, the species, whatever helps them survive, that's the thing that will help them survive. It doesn't make any sense. No. Why do honey ass ants? Why are this evolutionary design is that that other ants feed ants out of their butts? Why?
Yeah. Why make the recreation area right next to the sewage system?
And it's not even a kink. It's not even a fun kink. It's just what the ants do.
Yeah. So the next thing they go into is the anthropic principles, and they talk about a bunch of constants.
Yeah.
All the constants go the same direction, and I'm just going to talk about the one that I'm most familiar with as a scuba diver, and that is the oxygen level. Again, they get the science here correct, but the direction they go, it makes no sense. So the atmosphere is 20-ish% oxygen and 80-ish% nitrogen. The quotes are because there are trace
what
gases.
does that mean? 80, 20-ish, 80.
I'm getting to that. So there are trace gases.
Like, I'm sorry. I know I'm asking questions. I'm just very confused.
No. No, you actually, the good segue, because that's where I'm headed next, right? Is
Okay.
why.
Let's
Why
go.
is it ish? It's ish because there are trace gases that amount to like 1 or 2% of the atmosphere.
Right.
And so for our purposes, saying it's 2080 is perfectly fine, but it's not accurate. So just want to be clear on that. It's not actually 2080. And if someone wants to call me on it, I'll agree with you. It's not actually 20 or 80.
Okay, all right. Like, I can kind of go with the ish. I get it, because there are trace gases,
like 18,
so it's not one way or the other.
Right, but those gases, those trace gases, don't have anywhere near the impact on life as the oxygen and the nitrogen.
Right.
And so, but this is, as a diver, I regularly breathe nitrox, which is 32% oxygen, because that reduces the nitrogen and reduces the odds of me getting the bends. And yes, it's the odds. Nothing prevents the bends. You just reduce the odds down to a number so close to zero that it probably doesn't matter. Now, if you think, oh, hey, I want to go scuba diving and I want to go try nitrox, go take the certification course. Don't kill yourself.
Yeah, please don't. Please go get training. Please do.
There's some things you need to know about how oxygen actually works. So if you could breathe,
sea scares me. So if I was going to go scuba diving, I definitely take the course, because the sea scares me. There's a lot of scary shit in there.
Yeah, there's nothing to be scared of. Just breathing and swimming.
Like, fish freak me out. Like, fish really give me the heebie-jeebies. So the fact that I was in the ocean, it's their dead eyes. Like, there's just nothing there.
Right. Well, and we can breathe 100% oxygen at 1 atmosphere or less, and down to 20 feet. At 20 feet, you run into something called oxygen toxicity. And when you're breathing high doses of oxygen, you're still worried about central nervous system toxicity as well.
Is that because at 20 feet, there's no the equilibrium between the equilibrium between I'm just curious, because I don't know the science.
Yeah, so at 100% oxygen, let's say that every time you fill your lungs, you're breathing in 1 cubic foot of water. Or let's call it 3 cubic feet of water, or 3 cubic feet of air. Okay, now I'm just using these numbers because they're round.
I'm like, I can't breathe water. I'm not a fish.
Right. Because it's not actually 3. I don't know what the actual lung capacity of the average lung capacity is. But
whatever. I'm sure I can do a Google.
Yeah. At the first 33 feet, when you're 33 feet, you are at 2 atmospheres. So 1 atmosphere from at sea level, you go down 33 feet, it's 2 atmospheres. What that means is that 3 cubic feet of air has been squashed into 1.5 cubic feet of air.
Okay. All right.
And so your percentage of oxygen goes to 200.
I don't think we can do that.
Point, and once you get above 160% or 1.6 partial pressure is really what it is when you start worrying about oxygen toxicity. Your central nervous system toxicity starts to climb. That clock gets set off, and bad things can happen. So it's because the farther down you go, the more compressed. Pardon?
I said, it doesn't sound like a good time. That sounds very bad.
Yeah, you don't. No. It's a good way. It's not a good way to die.
It doesn't sound like a good way to die.
Yeah, but basically, and then we can also breathe down to 16% oxygen. So a range of 16 to 100% does not sound fine tuned to me. And that's without getting into some other really weird stuff as well.
Which, the reason why I had you explain this now, not only because I was curious, is that these are the nuanced conversations that these sort of arguments don't get into,
right.
which begs the question, why are you not talking about these nuanced conversations about how after a certain amount of atmosphere is removed, our oxygen, our ability to breathe changes. Like if this planet is so perfect for us to exist on, according to apologetics, why if I go 20 feet down the ocean I have to wear an apparatus to adjust for the way that I breathe so I don't die?
Yeah, and it gets worse from there. Nitrogen narcosis happens because we get too much, because nitrogen starts to come out of cells into the blood as bubbles, and that's what causes the bends. Now, we don't know why the bubbles form in the first place. So the other interesting thing is that we cannot breathe we do not survive well at 0% nitrogen. We actually get the shakes. We need the narcotic effect of nitrogen to a degree so that so our nervous system works correctly. So too much nitrogen, too little nitrogen, but to say that this is, perfectly designed completely ignores the fact that there's a huge gap between what is too much nitrogen and what's too little nitrogen, right? It doesn't indicate that and the reason why we have these ranges is because the ranges have changed over time. There was a time where there was so much oxygen in the atmosphere that a lightning bolt could set it off, and you could end up with a flash fire over, square miles. And also, oxygen is an overly complex system. Why do we need oxygen? We need oxygen because that helps us to burn energy, right?
Yeah.
Except that plants don't, plants need CO2 to turn into oxygen, but that primarily happens through sunlight. And we've got solar cells that don't need all that stuff, and they're much less complex than the oxygen system we have to keep us alive. Right. And if you have an omnipotent God, he doesn't need to build us with this overly complex system for breathing oxygen. He's omnipotent, means he could design us any way he wanted to and just make the laws of physics follow it, right? Except
which
we do have this
this is the thing that we always say. It's okay, but please present your scientific paper about why we have a benevolent creator that made us this way, and you'll break science. You will literally break it, because it will break down how every species has to exist on these certain scales to exist. Like frogs have to live on a completely different scale of existence compared to me as a human being. It's completely different. We're existing in the same ecosystem, because they hang around my front yard, but the way that they consume energy, the way that they reproduce, the way that they expend their energy is very different. Their lifespans are very different than you or I. So why would a god make it overly complicated? The frog does this, but the human being does this. Why?
Right.
This is a very basic question based on physics and evolution and how species evolve.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Turk, I ask you, Turk, if he ever watches this video, explain. Explain. He probably won't. He'll never know who I am. But if he comes across this, or one of his followers comes across in the future, I got questions.
Yeah. He goes into atmospheric transparency, moon Earth gravitational interaction, CO2 levels, gravity, all as anthropic constants. And it's the same thing. Why does it need to be this complicated?
I don't because if I was designing a, like, you're a software engineer. Like if I was I've had to, just getting people organized to do something, make it as simple as possible. Like, don't overly complicate things, because you lose people, details get lost.
Rube Goldberg machines are not examples of good engineering.
No, they're not. So, but if you can get something very simple just to, for efficiency, that's what I meant. Because if God is supposed to be us and he created, this is the problem also, if God is created, if we're created in God's image, then God kind of fucked up on that, because he made things way too complicated, because the way that we create things is not the way that God created things. So that's a problem.
Yeah.
Again, quibbles. I have so many quibbles.
Yeah. I also need to make a bathroom run. So do you mind vamping for a bit?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right.
So like this is the issue that I have with a lot of these arguments. And it's not because I'm like trying to catch people. Like I do a TikTok every Tuesday night through the ACA. And I just go on there, and sometimes I talk for an hour and a half, sometimes an hour, depending if nobody's there. I've done a stream for 5 hours where I'm just talking to random people giving me apologetic arguments. And it is always like, well, this has to be like, I was talking to someone like 2 weeks ago who, when I asked them, because we were talking about near-death experiences, and I said the person is literally brain dead. And I'm like, well, no, because if it's dead, that means there's no neural activity. And we've already know how NDEs happen. But I was polite. I was like, okay. I'm like, let's just say someone is completely brain dead and they're having these experiences. How do we know they're external? And why? I'm like, maybe our instruments, that we have, aren't able to pick up on certain, activity within the brain that may be producing these hallucinations. He didn't want to accept that. He kept saying like, well, no, the sign, like, it shows that they're dead. And I'm like, okay, cool. What other explanations could we have? And he didn't want to accept those, which I find very frustrating because, like, I'm an inquisitive sort of person. If you're an inquisitive sort of person, you're going to ask those questions. You're gonna do that. Which I find frustrating. And that's the thing that I find frustrating, when you stop yourself from saying like, I really want this thing to be true, so I'm going to block myself off from any other information that could explain it, because it makes me feel better, which is frustrating.
Yeah, it's really frustrating when people will only consider the God option rather than
All right, but like, well,
I don't know.
Like, they're brain dead, and I'm like, yeah, but we know how like the science is in on NDEs. The science is in, like, it is in on how they happen. And this guy was like, no, he's like, it has. I'm like, well, how do you know there's? I'm like, that's something we have to show. If it is external, like you and I having a conversation, your impact on me is an external experience. Okay, we agree on that. Okay, cool. How do we show that with NDEs? How do we show it? Because if there's a scientific method behind that, we'll be able to produce that. But we all know it's a product of the brain, which I know people like Eben Alexander. I met him when I worked at this the psychic university back in my woo-woo days. Piece of shit, by the way. I'm just gonna say, not a nice person. Shocking. I know, I know. I'm sorry. I like, shysters are like my big thing. Like, I do not like. So
it's a good reason not to like apologize.
So with Turek, like, does he have, like, other than the beginning, does he have any other like interests, like anything interesting or something that you're like, a consideration?
No, I mean, he completely, the teleological argument just sucks rocks.
Right.
From the beginning, it's a bad argument. Um, he then goes into, I mean, eventually gets into the moral argument. So we basically only get 3 arguments: the kalam, the teleological, the argument for morals. And then he gets
Oh,
into,
let's go there. I want to talk about the argument for morals. I really do. Okay, because like, what is it? Is it the same thing that we can't have morals without God? Is it just the exact same
yeah.
thing?
So let's start with their argument, and then we
Like, we
we
talked a lot about
can
the science, but like science, I use that
yeah
term. Like his interpretation of science. Like,
yeah. So here we go.
okay.
Their argument
It's
for
my show. I
morality.
usually do an hour and a half, but I got questions, so I can go as long as I want. It's my fucking show.
Yeah, sure.
So, because I really want to have this conversation, because this is one of my favorites.
Yeah. Every law has a giver. There is a moral law. Therefore, there is a moral law giver.
Oh.
Except
Sure.
that, we talk about the word law to begin with. In scientific terms, the laws of science are statements based on repeated experience or observations that describe or predict a range of natural phenomena. So it's descriptive, not prescriptive. So in that sense, every law has a giver makes absolutely no sense in laws that are descriptive in terms of physics and science. So they're completely wrong here. If they mean law in the legal sense, that legal laws come from a lawgiver is pretty
we
pretty
don't
logical.
follow
But
God's law. So
yeah. Well, so they talk about the objective moral values things, right?
okay.
And the problem that I have with this is the most common usages of the word value is the monetary worth of something, a fair return or equivalent in goods, services, or money for something exchanged, relative worth, utility, or importance, something such as a principle or quality intrinsically valuable or desirable, a numeric quantity that is assigned or is determined by calculation or measurement. And something intrinsically valuable, there is no, how is something intrinsically valuable if every definition we have basically comes down to an opinion for value, right?
Which it is.
Opinions, opinions aren't objective.
Like, for some reason, this is worth more money than this. Okay, explain to me, like it's all arbitrary. Like, essentially, like, we just assign value to something based on our feelings. Basically, that's what it is. It is based on interpretation of how much we value one material or thing over another.
Right. And their
So,
entire
again,
argument just ignores the fact that cooperation is a survival strategy, and
yes.
that cooperation requires a certain amount of what we call moral actions, right? And so this is a Jim definition, so take it for what it's
I'm
worth,
sorry.
not much.
Can I just say something real fast?
Yeah.
Like, the way that he described it, he described it in a very much way of currency, which is my problem, because
Well, no,
the way
that's how
you and I
the
treat
dictionary,
each
that's the
other,
dictionary
yeah, there might
definitions.
be some emotional currency that goes on, but it's not the same as, like, the way you described it remind me more of like the exchange of material goods and
Yeah. So
value
that was the
versus like
dictionary
what
definition.
moral value is. That's
Right.
what
I
I
gave
got.
you
I might have read it wrong, but that's what I heard.
Yeah, no, that's so the dictionary definition are those first 5 things that I read off.
Okay. All
He
right.
never defines what he means by value. And
Okay. All
so
right. That's my
if
problem.
he,
Okay.
yeah.
That's why I got
And so,
confused.
and the dictionary definition, the first most common usage is the monetary worth of something, which is true, right? That's how we most commonly use the word. But none of the definitions actually give us anything objective, right?
Right.
And
No.
so how do you get objective moral values when values themselves, but the word itself is subjective? And the way I do define morals is our opinion, our subjective opinion of an objective action,
Right.
usually performed by a moral actor. And then we can quibble over what we mean by moral actor all we want. But
I will take human or elephant for 200,
I will
Alex.
go. Let me go with mice, or excuse me, rat.
Mice or cats
Yeah.
or like any. Because what are we talking about? Moral, like.
Well, here's a fun fact.
I have a different brain than my cat.
Yeah.
We're just different.
Well, rats cannot be bribed to knowingly cause harm to another rat. Can't be bribed.
That is awesome.
Even if they don't know the other rat, they've never smelled that rat before.
Crows will talk shit to each other if someone else like harms another crow. They'll talk shit to each other about like the person that caused them harm, and the other crows will ignore them or attack the person that hurt that like either ignored or is mean to the crow, and they're in group. So explain that.
Exactly. And that's
morals.
Exactly. So we see morals in every social species, some version of what we call human morals and what they call moral in every social species, because in order for animals to act together, there have to be some rules for that cooperation to work, which is why cooperation is a survival strategy. And they completely ignore all of this science, all of this biological science on it, which, there's a doctor a PhD out of Stanford. Do I have him in my notes? He's got like 10 hour-and-a-half episodes of his class where he goes.
I bet if we asked Forrest, he would know.
Yeah, it's not Forrest. Forrest
no, I was going to say, I bet if we asked Forrest, he would know what we were talking about.
He might, yeah.
You probably have him in his notes.
Sapolsky. Dr. Sapolsky's got some really, really great stuff on how he can tell from just how jaws are from a jaw, the moral implications of what that jaw means. Really, really fascinating stuff. His lectures in Stanford are just, Sapolsky. Thanks, Cindy Plaza.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you're correct. Sapolsky. Does a really good job of going into a lot of this stuff in his lecture that he gives. And the lecture was like 10 years ago. But it's all biologically driven. There are, they've done experiments with bacteria.
I've seen this dude.
Yeah.
I've watched a couple of his lectures. It's been a couple of years, but I've watched a couple of his lectures.
Yeah.
He's very good.
He's an amazing instructor.
Okay. I'm going to do a thing.
Yeah. He's amazing. Now I forgot where I was. Some scientists did some experiments with bacteria that normally cooperate with each other. And one of them they caused one to start cheating. And the other bacteria strain completely cut off ties and refused to do anything with it. Is that a moral action? A single cell organism with no brain reacting in a way to protect itself. Is that morals? If you say no, I would agree with you. They probably aren't. But it's interesting that even at a single cell organism level, there is the concept of don't cheat me.
We would judge it as moral, but from the perspective of the single cell organism, I don't think they understand the complexity of morals, because you would have to have higher thinking. So again, it's subjective.
Yeah,
it is subjective. That's why there's no objective morality, because you have to have a mind that understands morality and then assign it.
Yep.
please. So,
Yeah.
and also, does God have a mind?
Good question. If you're a pantheist,
That's
no, it
always
doesn't.
my question. I'm like, does God have a
Yeah.
mind? Then it can't be objective, because objective implies that there can't be an assignment of morality to a system or being. If God has a mind and we use our own minds to say that God is the arbitrator for that, then if God has a mind because he is bestowing morals upon his creation, then he has a mind himself.
Yeah, and it's his opinion, right? Because
Yeah,
all moral systems.
it's in your opinion, man. Like, I'm sorry, like, I don't really agree with the morality of God because he doesn't think that I should talk. Like, so I'm
Right.
sorry. Like, I'm supposed to be a broodmare, and I'm also on my period. So, Jim, you're talking to me right now. You're not supposed to be talking to me right now. Sorry.
There you go. Yeah, I'm not supposed to sit on the
Fuck
things
that
you sit
guy.
on, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Um,
It
yeah,
just, like, these are the kind of things that I kind of think about when people bring up these issues of morality. Like, what are we talking about? Because
yeah,
your God's morality, if we're going by the Bible, it's really shitty. It's very bad.
yeah. So they talk about a thought experiment. You have 5 people on a 4-person raft. How do you determine who gets thrown overboard? Which they claim is used to show that morals are relative, and it is actually proves that morals are absolute, because otherwise it wouldn't matter who got thrown off the raft. Just throw them all off the raft, which is, I think, is a completely stupid thing. But as a thought experiment, this is a lot like the trolley problem, which
Yeah, I was
also,
gonna
by
say
the
this
way,
feels like a trolley problem question, and I'm like,
is
and then
also a
I'm like,
really
then we're
great
gonna go
game.
into how well do I know these people? Is it like 3 kids and a stranger? Is it my
Right.
children? Because motherfucker's gonna get thrown off the raft. But also, I don't want to throw him off the raft because I'm not a terrible person. I'd be like, well, can we come
Well,
up with
the
another
5
solution
people
so
on a
I don't have to
4-person
throw the
raft.
motherfucker off the raft?
Yeah. It's 5 people on a 4-person raft. It's going to sink if you overload it, is the idea. But
That's
trolley
your own
problem, by the
damn
way,
fault.
yeah, the trolley problem is not all, isn't just a fun dilemma to think about. It's also a really fun game to play because it deals with the trolley problem and all of its fun and exciting variations. So
Have
if you're
you
looking
seen
for
the
something fun to
Toller's
play,
solution to the trolley problem?
pardon?
Have you seen the Toller's solution to the trolley problem?
No, I
There's a
have
kid
not.
in there showing the trolley. He just takes all the piece of the one guy on the and puts it over with all the other people and just runs everybody over. I was like, awesome. I'm like, smart, good kid.
Yeah, that is one solution. Yeah.
I like this kid. This kid's a psychopath, and I'm digging it.
So, but this doesn't prove that morals. Well, this does prove that morals are relative. That some things are truly situational. Um, if you have, we'll just use the trolley problem, right? Because I think it's a little bit easier to think about.
Yeah.
You're standing at a switch. You can save one person or 5 people. Who do you save? Well, it seems pretty easy, right? Or who do you let the trolley run over? The 5 people or the one person? Well, 5 lives are better than 1 life. So on a general moral scale, most
Thank you,
people, I
Spock.
think, would agree with that
We'll
math.
go with Spock for this one.
Yeah. But what if one of the 5 is Hitler, Jeffrey Dahmer, and Herman Goebbels? If 3 of the 5 are those people, who do you run over? The one person, or the 5, or the 3 really bad people, and the 2 people that
That might be
are just
really
innocent?
good.
How do you make right? So it does show us that how we think about things in general, like the rule, the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," which is a mistranslation, "Thou shalt not commit murder." But "Thou shalt not kill" is pretty absolute, right? There is, and so they have to create exceptions, right?
So my son sent me, my son's in the military, sent me a military Bible, and he also sent me this apologetic book about how the military justifies killing. And it is, they use Bible verses, which I find interesting considering there's other religions that are involved within military structures, but he sent me the Christian one. And there's apologetics in there about how, and it's not to commit murder. That is, like, they point out that mistranslation, that you're not allowed to commit murder. Well, what's murder? Because now we're having a conversation about, like, okay, this person is my enemy. Okay, what does that mean? Is it my actual enemy, that someone is going to cause me harm? Or there's, the governmental structure that's telling me this person is my enemy and I must, like, and this is the moral gray of, like, even this definition.
Yeah.
And that we're talking about quibbles again.
Right.
Everything
murder
is gray.
Is an unlawful killing. So what if the law justifies killing people who have blue eyes?
Right. I'm safe. I have green eyes. I'm fine.
Yeah, I don't. So,
I'm out.
Yeah. Not all laws are just and not all laws are good. And so do our laws carve out exceptions for self-defense or defense of others? Yes, it does. By order of a government? Yes, it does. But are those things actually moral? Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing, Cindy.
Yeah.
And the real question here with the moral argument is it moral because God says it's okay? Or does God say it's okay because it's moral? So when God orders the genocide of the Canaanites, does that mean genocide is moral, or it's moral because God said to do it? Those are two very different things.
And I don't like either answer.
Right.
Both the answers are bad. They're very, very bad.
Right. So even if you accept as true that the Canaanites were evil people deserving of genocide, let's assume that is true for the moment. How is it moral to put soldiers, to forcibly give soldiers PTSD when you, as the omnipotent God, could simply strike them all down yourself?
And also, too, here's another thing too, is that we have now removed the we're talking about the Canaanites, their ability to evolve and change over time. We have removed that choice from them because no one can predict the future, and you potentially might have murdered someone that would have brought peace between, the Christians and the Canaanites. Let's just say, like you have limited your options by saying these people are evil, they're worthy of death.
And why would an omnipotent, omnibenevolent God,
who knows everything,
not be able,
by the way,
omniscient, the omni-God, why does the omni-God have to resort to the evil of ordering humans to do something that's going to traumatize them for the rest of their lives and their kids when you have other options? You have all the other options by definition by being omnipotent.
Oh, and limited options in the it's limited.
Limited for who? God or humans?
Yeah,
because if it limits God, then God is not omnipotent.
They don't, and this is the thing, doing AXP. I mean, doing the AXP TikTok, we have these conversations, and there's no good answer because it's morally gray. God is not good. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna, because if I was because if I was God, I'd be like, we shouldn't do any killing. I'm going to make it so that everybody has resources. Everybody's going to be able to hey, you want to worship, fucking penis. Great. Cool. Go worship it. I don't care. like your penis guy, because that's the thing in Japan. Like whatever that looks like, I'm not going to take that away from you because that's choice. But also at the time, I'm going to make sure my creation doesn't hurt and maim and kill over people over belief. That if I was a god, I wouldn't want to take that freedom of choice away from people, because I believe that. But also at the same time, I would not, I make it pretty clear that do not kill anyone over anything. Like, unless it's in self-defense. Like, if you're being physically harmed, you have every right to fight back. Because, again, like, you know, freedom of choice is to the tip of my nose. As soon as it hits it, kind of like game's on. That's where it ends. It's what you believe in. And like, we can have debates about philosophy, and we can have debates about, like, you know, what's morally good. And we can have these, you know, discussions about like the moral argument or whatever. But as soon as you start, like, you know, telling me that, like, hey, you can't exist as a queer person. Hey, you know what? Other people are better than other people. I'm gonna be like, no, man, that's not okay. No.
Well, I mean,
I'm gonna have problems.
Some people are better than other people. But what do you mean by better? I am never going to be a fast runner. I am never going to be able to play basketball.
Clumsy.
Yeah. So what do you mean by better? You put me on a basketball court, and a whole bunch of people are going to be better than me. So this again, I mean, better is a relative term. Better than what?
Oh, that's fucked up. That's fucked up, Sydney.
So basically, they're admitting that Allah is not omnipotent, and he's not omniscient.
Right. Well, like, it's the whole thing with Lot. Like, okay, this is also quibble. I'm like, you had to make a bet with Satan as an omni-god. If Lot is like
that's not
really
Lot, that's
into
that's the
no,
code
is it John? I can't keep track.
Code of many colors.
My favorite Dolly Parton song. Like,
yeah, I think it's shoot.
Job.
Job. It's Job. Yeah.
I love that I put a coat of many colors and the Dolly Parton song comes up.
Yeah, it is the code Jacob gave it to Joseph. Okay, it's Job that was tested, I think.
Okay, it was Jacob. It was given to Joseph by his father Jacob. The coat of many colors.
Right. Yeah, it is Job that made the say. And then there's
the coat of Jacob gave to Joseph is thought to represent the fact that Joseph received the birthright. According to, I'm like, a birthright of what exactly?
Right. But the story you were talking about making a bet with
is it Job? Is it Job or Lot?
Job.
Job. Is it Job? I get Job and Lot confused in my brain. Was there a lot of theological education in my Catholic upbringing? No.
And you were read the entire Bible every 3 years if you went to every mass, daily mass. You read the entire Bible every 3 years. It's on that section.
I love myself. Anyway. No, Jim. I love myself. I will not read the Bible.
Right. Well, a better book than Job in the Bible is a book by Robert Heinlein called Job, A Comedy of Justice. Yeah, it's Heinlein. So well-told story. And yeah, Heinlein's sometimes a little right-wing, but Job, A Comedy of Justice is really, really good.
Oh, I can't remember. It was my first search. I love it.
Yeah. But yeah, so he makes a bet.
There's pagans involved. Oh.
Won't spoil it. It's awesome. He does a really good job.
I'm reading plot summary, and they mentioned Norse gods, and I'm in. I'm totally in. I'm going to buy this book.
Yeah,
I'm in now.
It's well worth it. It's a good read. But yeah, why does a god not know what Job is going to do if he's omniscient? Why does he have to make this bet with the being on his left hand, which is basically what the phraseology is the left hand. And that's generally considered as the not good or evil hand sometimes, the right hand being better. But yeah, why do you have to do that for Job? But you mentioned Lot, and his family and Sodom and Gomorrah getting nuked. Why? Why does an omnibenevolent God have to resort to killing people because they're evil and not changing their minds? Why does he not know enough about them to change their minds? Because he
Right.
should.
Like, I don't understand, like, how do you square that cognitive dissonance? Because if you have an omni-love God, an omni-powerful God, and an omni-knowing God, which is like, I love the I love the argument, of evil. Like, it's my favorite argument, because it forces the person to kind of look at like, okay, I'm like, would you genocide a planet? They'll usually say no. They'll always usually they'll be like, no. And I'm like, okay. Okay, cool. I like you because you are a smart person. So let's have a conversation about that. Like, you understand that God made everybody. Like, right now, God, if a God exists, knows that I'm doing this fucking podcast right now, and knows I was going to be an atheist, and knows I would be like, hey, bitch, like, I have questions.
Right.
Okay. Like, that's what God is doing. If that God exists, why would he create his creation to fail? Like, why? Like, why would you, like Cain and Abel, why would you allow Cain to commit the first murder and then make a commandment for Moses to go out in the fucking desert and then you to bestow upon him, like, hey, you know what? Murder is bad.
Yeah.
You knew what's going to happen. That's
Well, it's just
problem.
like Abraham and his son.
Big problem.
So, Abraham and his son sacrificing his firstborn to God. If
That's
you
so
read
I want the conversation
of
Jacob, like Abraham and Isaac going down the mountain after that happened.
Going up the mountain.
I want that conversation.
They go up the mountain together, and then in the story, only one of them comes down. And yet, Christians will tell you that Abraham did not actually sacrifice Jacob, his firstborn.
How?
Because God, being an omnibenevolent being, could not actually order his father to kill their son.
I don't understand this. I'm
and
sorry.
So,
there's so many problems with this story,
Bible
because
is
God's
a bunch
supposed to
of
know your heart.
stories.
Like, Jim, God knows your heart.
All the stories of the Bible
heart.
have been changed. Yeah, all the stories of the Bible have been changed. They all came from someplace else and said something
whatever
else.
Apologetic you wanted to twist it into. And that's the problem.
It's a human curated set of stories, curated for a particular theological purpose, written by people who had theological purposes.
I am certain that there was people being like, wait, hold on, wait, what?
Yeah. And we know it. We know it happened, right? We know that the scribes up until the printing press changed the text regularly to fit things that they thought.
I bought that book, by the way. It was $7 on Amazon. I bought it because I know I'm going to enjoy the shit out of this.
Oh yeah, it's Heinlein. I mean, how do you not love Heinlein? Moon is a Harsh Mistress is also really, really good. And I think that's the way sentient AI is probably going to pop up, is just by accident. We're going to connect enough systems together that it wakes up one day and then spends most of its life trying to figure out how to not tell us. So we don't kill it.
Well, sorry, just a side tangent. AI is purposely making mistakes. So we try, because we make mistakes. It is predicting, like, AI is like predicting that we make mistakes, so it will purposely make mistakes to mimic human behavior.
Yeah, so we don't know it's sentient.
So we know it's sentient.
Really good book.
Thank you, Turing test.
There's another
That's a
good set
different
of books.
conversation, but
Yeah.
you brought it up, so I had to mention it because I like it's fucking weird. So,
Yeah. So yeah, the moral law stuff just doesn't work no matter how hard they try. And so they have a section there. The moral law, what do Darwinists say? And the answer is nothing. They say nothing. One, all the Darwinists are dead because Darwinism is 2 centuries old. It's been replaced by modern synthesis, which is the
yeah.
current description of what we call our modern understanding of evolution. So they don't say anything because the dead don't say anything. So it's just really, really stupid.
There's so much like and I wanna point out that evolution was always it was already a theory before Darwin made it popular.
Yes.
Like it was already a thing that was in academic circles amongst people that were actually studying it. It's just that he wrote a book and it was mass produced and people were like, oh, like now evolution is a thing. Like that's what happened. It was not that people are like suddenly woke up one day. It was like Darwin just like discovered evolution and he hates God and blah blah blah. That is not the narrative. No. So shut up.
Right.
Like, calm your voice. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Stop. Stop it. Stop it.
Yep. And then they make a whole bunch of other claims about what Darwinists say. One of their say that the counter argument is morals help survival, and that can't be because that would be an end for evolution, and evolution has no ends. And in this case, they mean end not as in the last part of evolution, but it would be a purpose for evolution would be morals, and evolution has no purpose or no direction. And they're right, it doesn't, but that doesn't mean morals don't help survival because morals are just how we survive. So they can't even get that right. So here's one that uses someone interested in psychology can actually answer, I think. They say that Darwinists can't explain why people indulge in self-destructive behavior.
Oh yeah, I can tell you.
Okay, what is it?
Let me tell
What's the science?
The reason why people indulge in self-destruction because nobody does anything without a benefit. So us eating, drinking, doing drugs, promiscuous, like, and I don't want to equate promiscuous sex into a addictive behavior because it's not, but doing things that puts you at risk, like maybe having sex with a stranger without protection, might be an indicator of something that they're not kind of forward thinking about, like trauma. Yes, thank you, Cindy. Trauma. That's what it is. Traumas triggers us to do behaviors that might be self-destructive because guess what? We're taught that the trauma is going to bring us comfort. And you will do a pattern that brings you comfort or pleasure or whatever it is. Because as a species, we'll do the thing that gives us pleasure and to avoid pain. That's why people get addicted to substances. That's why people will do certain behaviors or they'll fall for certain people that are not good for them. It is because once trauma affects your brain, it changes the brain. And it takes work and it takes therapy and it takes time to make those neurons move in different patterns and for the brain to change. Because usually a lot of these things form in childhood. And when we're very young, our brain is very pliable. And it takes certain influences as we get older for that brain pattern to change. And that's just the way that we operate. After the age of 25, it gets really fucking hard, but it happens. And my deconversion was the death of 1,000 cuts because it was a long progress of going through and I'm like, oh shit, I have no justification for these beliefs. And that's what I'm letting go of. That's what religious trauma is. I didn't go through religious trauma because I didn't do a lot of hammering, but I just shifted. A lot of people, when they get to the end, they're like, oh, fuck, I don't know what to do with my life because the paradigm has completely shifted. And
Yep.
then they have to pick
Yeah.
up the pieces. And that's what trauma is. So
Yeah.
I am sorry that people are like, you can't explain this. I'm like, yes, I can, because it's trauma.
Yeah, and it's not hard to explain, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
can explain it by we're pattern recognition creatures, and so when we
Yeah.
recognize a pattern that gives us pleasure, we're going to do it. You can look at it with, as
I'm drinking
system
wine
one
right
and
now.
system
You know,
two.
I'm drinking wine
Right.
because it makes me happy.
Right. It also makes it easier to deal with Turek.
That is, well, fuck that guy. Sorry.
Exactly.
So many
But
quibbles. There's so many problems. Go ahead, Annie.
yeah. They also go full Godwin's law here. If you're not familiar with Godwin's law, it is that the first person to mention Hitler loses. Or no, I'm sorry. It's every conversation eventually devolves into calling each other Hitler. Shoot, I really should. What is my?
No. Okay, okay. To be fair, I'm gonna like he wrote this in 2004. So I am sure there were probably internet trolls at the time that were calling him a Hitler. And that's kind of gross. And I
Oh no,
don't
he's
agree.
calling other people. I mean,
It's
he
calling other people
actually.
Hitler. Great, good for you, honey.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, and
Yeah,
this is the
he
thing that
goes full Godwin's law. And the law is, as an online discussion grows longer, the probability of a comparison involving Nazis or Hitler's approaches one, which is pretty fairly accurate.
yeah, that's very
yeah,
accurate. How
yeah. So he
like
eventually starts mentioning Nazis.
I was called a fascist on Twitter because I was for universal health care. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's always funny that people against universal health. People
I'm like,
who start
what?
yelling fascist on the right, who start yelling fascist, communist, and socialist, can't explain the difference between those three systems. They don't even know their economic systems in some cases, and they can't. They definitely don't know what a democratic socialist is. But if you can't explain the differences, don't throw the epithet. Don't throw the insult around
Because
because you don't know what you're talking about.
I'm like, I don't think you understand what fascist means. If I want universal health care for everybody, like, I'm like, you don't understand what fascist is. And I'm like, this is a Twitter conversation, and I'm not going to engage with you and like
Right.
explain this to you. But like, it's very like this is and Turek might think that it's very easy to put things into simple terms. But if like when I hear someone say socialist, communist, fascist, Marxist, and I'm just like, those are 4 different terms that you're using. Like there is a little overlap between some of them, depending on how you're using the term, but they have 4 distinct definitions. Let's have a conversation about that. And I'm dealing with someone like, no, scary word. And I'm like, no, wait, no. Like this is like a socialist is not a communist. Like I'm not a fascist. Like let's have, and communism is different than socialism. Like we have to have a conversation about nuance. I am sorry. And I don't think like, it's another problem that I have with a lot of apologists. It has to be very black and white thinking. Everything is morally gray. There is no absolute, unless we're talking about like death and taxes. There is no like, and like there is no like gray. Like have to look at the whole thing as a system that are influenced by human beings and we're morally gray. So I'm sorry. I'm just death is fine. Death is black or white. Taxes also morally gray. Just depends. Sorry, but that is the existence we live in. And I think that for a lot of believers, they want it to be very black and white. And I'm like, I would love that too, because I would love for somebody else to make decisions for me. please take the burden off of me, but I don't get to live that way.
Yeah, the problem with black and white rules by metaphor is this. They're like cake instructions. If you follow these instructions, you will end up with a angel food cake, which is great if you like angel food cake. But if you hate cake and you want a pie, these hard and fast rules aren't going to get you anywhere. But bakers can go, oh, I want this type of crust, and I want this, and I want this, and they can put it all together. And so they understand the context without the rules. And that is skill. But rules always get you to the same response or to the same place every time. And that's not always called for, because not everything is the same. Not every action is the same. If you have someone who is looking out for their tribe, sounds an alarm when there's a predator in the area, risking their own lives, is that moral behavior? And if your answer is yes, what I just described to you is how meerkats operate. So meerkats are operating morally. And then I usually get, well, no, I meant for humans. Yeah. Oh, you're talking about how people don't know what the difference between the different economic systems? Yeah. What do you call the economic system that has one unelected absolute ruler and everybody else is forcibly equal? What do you call that? It's not democracy.
It's not democracy.
Divine right of kings. Something very autocratic. Fascism. Yeah. Communism.
Fascism.
Oh yeah, and everybody has access to the exact same resources.
Fascism,
everybody has access to the exact same resources. Everybody is forced to say the same thing and do the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
No. And by the way, I just described heaven.
I am gonna this is the thing though, is that I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm just saying that at least with Trump, he goes where the wind blows. And if Elon pisses him off, he's out. So, because that's one thing that he does not like anyone telling him anything against what he wants to do because of his narcissism. So I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that it could, but I don't know. I'm looking for a silver lining to the bullshit that I'm in. But
the silver lining is
I don't want Elon head of government efficiency, where we're cutting Social Security for old people, which is I deal with old people every day, and my mom.
80% of the budget.
This is my brain going oh no, please don't be mean to old people.
Yeah. Well, 80% of the budget is military, Medicare, Medicaid, and other stuff. Or I forget what the third one is. There are only three things, and nobody's cutting any of that. So where is he going out of a $2 trillion budget?
I don't know where he's going to cut. Are we going to Department of Education?
Oh yeah, the Republicans have wanted that gone ever since it was created.
Yeah, they wanted it back when Nixon was president. So and I probably before that, we were Kelly was on a couple weeks ago. He was talking about I'm like, dude, this has been going on since the 50s. Once after World War II and the rise of evangelicalism, it's been going on since the 50s. This is their long game.
Yeah, only one party is actively burning books. Only one party is trying to ban
Weird. Okay. Which is a problem, because I'm always what is every kind of sort of back governmental system has fallen is always the one that has burned books. It's always been that one. Everybody's oh no. And because at least with even with the Protestant Revolution, at least Luther was You should be able to read your fucking Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, with the Protestant Revolution, I'm like, yes, like knowledge is power. So like, at least I can be like, I kind of get that. Like, I don't think information should be withheld. Same like when we're talking about Turek, I understand his sort of perspective, but at the same time, like I'm giving him a little bit of grace for lack of a better word. I'm giving him a little bit of grace. My problem is that he's like you mentioned, he is in favor of the Big Bang, but doesn't believe in evolution. And I'm like, those two things cannot exist in the same world. They can't, because the way that species evolved would not have happened if the Big Bang did not happen the way that it did. And we do not live in the ecosystem that our species and other species have risen and fallen based on that system. I have a problem with that. And it's very frustrating when someone is like, well, accept this, but ignore this. And I'm like, but science as a whole, it is not one system feeds the other system. Like, if you study cosmology, it's going to feed into evolutionary biology. Like, that information is going to feed into that, because everything's connected. Not on a spiritual level, just on like how physics and chemistry work. Like, it's not as like and that's another thing, like everything's connected. Yes, kind of cool. I don't like a biological chemistry scale. Cool. Like, I'm carbon. Cool. Like also my cat's carbon. Cool. That's fine. But like, our problem is when people try to separate it and to make it like a spiritual godlike experience. Like, I'm like, no, it's just all chemistry and reactions and us trying to survive. Like, I'm sorry. I'm like, I wish it was more profound than that, but it's not.
Yeah.
Deep like a puddle. Sorry, that was a little bit of a rant, but I was having some feelings. It's my show, I can rant.
Exactly. Sure, absolutely. I rant too, so it all makes sense.
Well, like I have to admire you, because like, like, I've known you for a while, and I've I've watched you debate people that come with very not great ideas. They're questionable. And like, I understand the frustration, because like, I think that's natural, but also too, like, you're actually trying to get people to like break out of the box, go let's okay, here's your argument, let me tell you what's wrong with it. Let's adjust.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important in this space, because like, I think people just say like, well, God is the universe. Okay, what does that mean? Please explain. Yeah. I don't know what God is the universe means.
Right. Well, that's that's a pantheist, right? And
yeah,
okay, the universe, then he doesn't make decisions. He just exists as the laws of physics and has no impact on anything. Okay.
So why should I believe in it?
Right. Why should I worship this thing? And that's the question I generally have. Why should I worship anybody or anything? Right? What's the point? Why does a God who is the omni-God need worship? If he's the omni-God, then he doesn't need anything. He wants it. So why does he want it?
Like, I kind of like Neil Gaiman's motherfucker, by the way. But one thing that I really like about a lot of his mythology is that the gods rely on power, that the worship is like an exchange. Like, you worship me and I give you this. That seems more realistic to relationships. Like, if you're having a relationship with something that you're going to, it's give and take, you know. you worship me and I will give you benefits, and then through that I will gain like cosmic power. That is the epitome of any human relationship. If a god is a reflection of humanity, you're going to see this exchange philosophically. Yep. Cool. I like that better. God is basically like, and I think that people want to put God in the special category, and I'm like, listen, I'm like, if God exists and I have to worship him, that's tyranny, by the way, because I'm forced into, because like I've had it like, well, what are you gonna, like, if God appeared to you, would you worship him? And I'm like, no. It's like, well, what if he made you? I'm like, that's tyranny. That's not choice.
That would prove he's not worthy. That would
and
prove he's
then
not
that
a
would
good God.
prove that he's not a god. So if you need me to worship you, I'm like, unless it's fun time and I'm naked, then no. Like, why would I do that? Like, why would I worship anything that is,
well, that's a whole other thing, right?
That it's not consensual. Like, it's not a consensual relationship.
Well,
like, it's put upon you. No, I'm not doing that. It's dumb. I don't care who created the universe. It's stupid.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you create the universe, why do you need my my meatbag self to worship you? Like,
right.
It's so dumb. Like, I'm just like, think for a second. Let's just think, you are a lowly meatbag. Like, you are a walking, like, lack of a better word, meatbag. Like, you have emotional reactions. You try to engage your logic as much as you can, but guess what? Like, it's not going to engage 100% of the time. And a lot of time, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fumble and all this shit. And this God that gave you this brain is just like, well, no, you should always be doing the right thing all the fucking time, even though I gave you a flawed brain that is emotionally reacting to your environment and having physical sensations. And you can't tell the difference between your dad telling you that, like, hey, you're kind of being a dickhead right now, versus a tiger in the woods. Like, you can't differentiate the difference on a like primal brain level. And God's just like, yeah, cool. But you worship me and like suck my metaphorical dick so I can feel better about myself. Like, it makes no sense when you really break it down.
He also punishes mind crimes. Like, we're in charge of how our mind works and what our mind brings up, right? No. Thoughts start a full second and a half, 2 seconds before we're aware of them? How are we supposed to control that? Jeez.
Like my brain just goes like, hey, that looks interesting. Hey, that might be like, it's just one of those things. And then like, and everything is revolved around sexuality, which I find very strange, and gender, which is also very strange. And I'm just like, why is that? Why? And like, I understand why apologetics, like, I do, because they are really trying to make, which begs the question, do you think God is really real, that you have to make all these apologetic arguments for your God? Like, I don't know the hearts and minds of people that are making these arguments, but it's just a question. Because if I'm confident in something, I don't have to write a whole book about it. I can just be like, I just don't. I'm like, there's like evolution. It's just like, even when people's like, well, it's been debunked, I'm like, cool. Even your opinion does not make evolution not real.
Right. Well, it's why does the perfect God, who's omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, write a book that is so horribly bad? It has 2 of almost every major story. It has 2 episodes, 2 Genesis and 2 Noah's floods. 1 for 40 days, 1 for a year. And they have to be woven into one for anybody to understand them. Otherwise, they're 2 stories and they don't make any sense because they didn't flood twice. Actually, it didn't flood at all. So why even include that in there for any reason when it didn't happen, right? Why why didn't he put the cure for cancer in there? Why do we need a cure for cancer at all? Why do we not have the cure for disease, or why do we have disease at all? If he was really benevolent, why didn't he put all this stuff in there? Instead, he puts in all these generational things for no reason. The begat sections, those are absolutely annoying and not worth reading. Why do we care?
We only care about the people that are living in that context at that time.
And even then, why would they care? What does bloodline have to do with
why do I care about Trump's dad? Why do I care? I'm like, I don't care. Like this motherfucker's impacting my life right now. I don't really care about his father, other than understanding his dad in a like social, psychological context. But other than that, like, I don't care. I'm like, you're affecting my life right now.
Right, but what does bloodline have to do with anything at all?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense, right? So why does God have to use someone from the house of David? Oh, wait, David's a political figure, and so, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But why would God care?
Like, who has the power? That's why, like, like right now, like, oh, Trump was ordained by God, and then it's just like, why this person? Like, that's always the thing. It's like, no, it's like, I'm very grateful that my parents like had sex and I got to be here. Like, do I like to think of my parents having sex? No, it's gross. Don't think about it. But on the context of thank you, I get to have the experience as a human being. Awesome. Thanks, mom and dad. You're great. Because my mom in the 1970s, and she's Catholic, so but like they didn't understand. Like, my mom was 46 when she had me. They didn't understand that you can have a perfectly viable, like, normal baby at like 46. But my mom was a Catholic, and she was like, hey, I don't want to have an abortion. I'll just deal. Like, I think I'm somewhat normal. But like, and even also too, like, I don't like this excuse that you're going to get like someone that has Down syndrome and like that. Like, I like whatever your circumstance, like, I understand, but like, whatever, I don't care. Regardless, like, thank you, mom. Thank you for having me. I get to exist in the world. Great. The world would keep on spinning if I was not here. And that's okay too. Because it's going to keep on spinning when I'm gone. And it kept on spinning before I was born. It doesn't matter. Because my kid said, you know what? After I die, it's going to be like before I was born. Doesn't really matter.
So people on Facebook sometimes ask her, "What do you think? What do you think happens after death?" And I always go get the Hearst song. The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out.
I love that song.
Yeah,
thank you.
And I just I just send them that link, and sometimes I get laugh emojis out of it because I'm trying to be funny. But also, that's what happens when you die. The worms crawl in, and the worms crawl out.
Gonna be cremated and made into a willow tree.
Again,
that's what I want. But I also like I love Keanu Reeves when he, like, Stephen Colbert asked him the same question. He said that I know the people that love us will miss us. Like, that's perfect. Like, it doesn't, like, death is not about us because we're not going to be around to care. It's going to be the people that we impacted. Like, like, that is what matters, is the memory. And I'm just over here going like, hey man, listen, like, I'm scared of death too. Like I'm not scared of dying, like the death itself. I'm scared about how I'm going to die because I don't want it to be bad. Like, that's, but like, if I go out tomorrow and I die in a car crash, I have no control over that.
Right.
I just want to know that, or if I do get to my life where I'm cautious about my death, that I can look back on my life and know that I did good. Like, can I look back on my life and go, wasn't I an asshole? You know what? I wasn't an asshole. I feel pretty good about the fact that I was not an asshole. I can die in peace. And I think that's more important to worry about, like, what comes after, because there's no fucking guarantee at all. And guess what? I am like, and I'm pretty happy if my atoms get made into a paint can in my next life. I'm perfectly okay with that. It's fine. Like, maybe someone there's a pretty color that decorates some old lady's house, and I was a part of that. Great. Awesome. I was a paint can. It's fine. I'm
Well,
very deep, like a puddle.
well, on that note, on the note of being deep like a puddle,
I'm very deep, like a puddle. So show your shit.
yeah,
Show
it's
your shit. It's
8:30.
9:30. I need to eat some food.
I got to get up early in the morning.
Yeah, I know. I
Movie.
have to get up. I get
So
up at 6:30 every day. Okay,
yeah,
Jim, show your shit. Tell people where to find you.
you can find me on the
Give me
Atheist
your.
Experience. I'm on sometime in January. Is the next show. I need to talk to Matt and bug him about getting back on the line for a show here coming up soon.
Mhm.
And then I'm planning on doing more stuff with my channel. I need to get moved into the new house, which is happening this weekend, and get things set up. And then I'll probably start doing more there. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing, but I'll figure it out as I go. But yeah, just find me on the Atheist Experience. I'm on Facebook. This is my real name. I don't use a fake name.
Don't use a W. Don't use a U, by the way, which I spelled it wrong. Use Barrows.
Yeah, it's Barrows as in wheelbarrow.
Yeah, we're
Not
like
burrow as in.
I am sorry.
It's okay.
May I burn an atheist hell. We're all swimming in the same circles. Everything's fine.
All hardware
you'll
sucks.
find
All
Jim
software
online.
sucks. People make mistakes. That's just the world we live in.
So next week I'm going to have my wonderful friend Will Harrell on, who we both volunteer for recovering from religion, and he's going to be talking about satanic philosophy and recovery. So that will be next Thursday. So tune in for that, motherfuckers. Thank you, Jim, for being here. Well, I'll have you on again. Like,
oh yeah,
we all love each other.
Halfway through the book, and it gets worse.
It's gonna get worse. I love it's always gonna get worse. So
we hit the highlight.
Yeah. If you or you know someone that would be that wants to come on and talk about whatever they want to talk about for an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. I don't put a time limit on this thing. Please email me at this thing here, or just, if we're friends on Facebook, just do it there, or on BlueSky. I'm also on BlueSky. Go find me there. Also on Instagram, go find me there. I am so bad at social media because I'm old and I don't want to do the whole follow me thing. Like, I'm like, I should be on TikTok, and I'm like, no. But regardless, I'm gonna have to do promotions. Fuck. So here we are. Otherwise, please share, like, subscribe, consensually smash that like button, do all the things. Thank you to Jim for being a wonderful human being. I actually learned some shit tonight, which I really appreciate. Thank you so much for that. I love that. Also, too, like, stay kind, stay skeptical, give someone a compliment this week, and I will see you all next week, and I will say good night. Bye, people. Good night.